Welcome to Clienting, your place to get information about legal marketing and client development. This is Kelly Street, Marketing Director for Attorney Sync.
And this is Tsakalakis, one of the founders of Attorney Sync.
Happy day to you, Tsakalakis.
Happy day to you, Kelly Street. Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Clienting.
Yes, super excited to be here with our guest today, who is Jason Beahm, a lawyer that has a very interesting background that I can't wait to dig into. So
yeah, I'm confused. I thought we were interviewing DJ Laserbeam today.
You're getting a little bit of both.
Excellent. Can't wait to talk about it.
So, Jason, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself? Give a little bio. I know you emailed me a bio that I would like to read before you start off on your own. Jason's bio is out on bail, out of jail. Music is the holy grail.
Genius.
Incredible.
I just didn't want to write another traditional bio because I'm terrible at writing those. So thought I'd try something else.
No, it's excellent. I mean, that will stick in my mind. I will be saying that to myself the rest of the day at least.
Mission accomplished then.
There you go.
So what is your practice area or areas, or where are you located? Tell everybody a little bit about that.
I'm located in San Francisco, California. I grew up in Kansas City, went to law school at the University of Kansas, and I knew probably somewhere between undergrad and law school that I definitely wanted to move to California. And I didn't have a whole lot figured out beyond that as far as what my practice areas were going to be. But I was fortunate enough to have an amazing internship during law school for a criminal defense barrister in London that was definitely really influential. We're still in touch to this day. And so essentially, I found myself at a point where I wanted to start a business. I wanted to start a law practice, and criminal defense was the area that I had the most experience with and felt the most confident to just get it up and running and go for it. So I had another job at the time. It was kind of winding down, and I put up a website back in 2013 and started taking criminal defense clients. And at the time, it was a totally criminal defense focused practice. I started doing misdemeanors, warrants, things like that, some felony cases eventually. But where the whole thing kind of took an interesting turn was that I also had and have always had a passion for music. And so I was going to lots of events in San Francisco, particularly house music, and over time got to know a huge network of people that were all involved in the music business and had legal needs. And so over time, what's happened is I've wound up with more clients that are artists and venue owners, and also started speaking about, a lot of at music festivals and a lot about music and how people can protect their rights in the context of, say, a music festival or a concert. And I partnered with a lawyer that goes by the Festival Lawyer, who has a huge following, and his name's Cameron Bowman. And we started doing a podcast about a year ago about this, as well as speaking at some law schools and CLEs and stuff like that. And so it's really just that part of my practice has taken on a whole new life, and I'm really enjoying that right now.
One of the things that I like, and it's a theme that regularly comes up, particularly like about your story, is that a personal interest intersects with your practice because, one, from a client development standpoint, you're in that community, right? You're a recognized person in the community. You're contributing to the community. Ultimately, the context of client development, that's like one of the most powerful ways to start to build your practice, right?
Yeah, it's true. And it had the good fortune of being, I think, genuine and happening organically. I knew not to go to nightclubs and bombard people with business cards or try to talk about changes in the law. If there's a time for that, if people have that interest, we can do that. But I was just there because I love music, and I also really like the production side of events. So the lighting, the sound, the management, all of it is interesting to me. So it did kind of dovetail nicely into when people that were involved in that industry had legal issues, I was a person that they would immediately think of. And that's been happening more and more lately. Like this year in particular, I've had more clients that are venue owners and artists than I've ever had. And I love it. It's great to deal with people that are creating.
I was wondering how much of your practice now is turning into this niche law where you're doing festival law or festival related law.
I'd say now it's probably around a third of my practice. It seems to be, I can't predict how it may change. What I have been doing recently, which is a bit of a change in maybe what I thought was the standard philosophy for how to build a practice, or at least a lot of advice that you get is to pick a niche, go super deep there, don't be a generalist, don't practice in too many areas. And I think there's a lot of good reasons for that advice. And so that's why I started off focusing on criminal defense, specifically DUI. Bragg, my firm, won best DUI firm for the third year out of the last 4 years in San Francisco. So that's super exciting. But it's interesting because, we'll certainly aggressively defend a DUI case for a good client. Over time, that's becoming a less significant part of the practice. And that's probably good news. I mean, around here, there's so many ways with Uber and Lyft and, other options, whatever it may be, to not drink and drive. And so that part of the practice is maybe less important or becoming less important. And I'm shifting my focus to the quality of the potential clients and the future relationships. And so I'm more willing to take a chance on helping someone with something that I haven't helped before, because I trust that I have a network of people that I can turn to that can help as well, as long as the clients are on board with that. So if I have a relationship with someone, and I tell people all the time, any legal problem, you can contact me. I will try to help you find the right person.
I got to jump in there because you said a lot of really important, good things that I think I want to call out. So one, everybody listening, really important point, technology impact that might impact your practice. So Jason mentioned, hey, you know what? There's a lot less people in drunk driving accidents because of autonomous vehicles. That trend's going to continue. So how can I continue to connect with, whether it's a specific community or strengthen the relationships I have, to be able to service folks in a different legal context? So important, because so many lawyers get their blinders on, whether they're told by marketing people, niche, which again, and I think Jason alluded to this, it's good to be known for a specific thing, but trying to understand how you can help people in other contexts is so important as technology impacts that marketplace, and as well as making sure that you're becoming the go-to person for really any legal issue. Even if you end up not being their lawyer, building that network and tapping into the power of that network is extremely valuable for really any practice that you're in.
So, Jason, you are starting to niche down into this festival law and doing more of that. And I think that's so incredibly awesome. But I did see that you have kind of multiple online profiles for the different practice areas that you do manage or that you feel like you have expertise in. The personal injury, criminal defense, DUI, and like on Yelp, for instance, there are 3 or 4 different Beahm law sections, and they all have reviews, mostly all good reviews, and they're kind of focused on those individual practice areas. So was that a you thing or kind of a Yelp error?
No, that's definitely a me thing. In terms of categories, to get specific, I was just at the AVO Lawyeronomics conference in Las Vegas, which was incredible. And this was something that actually came up as well. And I was able to, kind of get the experts' opinion in terms of how to do this or how not to do it. So there's really 2 schools of thought. One, and it's really back to the niche conversation we were having a minute ago. One, you only put down the category that you're the most well-known for, or that you want those kinds of clients. Or you put down all the categories that apply to you. You don't put stuff down that makes no sense. But if you take those kinds of cases, or if it broadly applies, you do. So I do the same thing for my Google My Business profile as well. I think I'm on 7 categories there. There isn't really any downside. Some of the categories are law firm, lawyer, but then more specifically, I think it says criminal defense attorney as the first category. So yeah, I don't take any divorce cases, so I wouldn't put down the divorce category, but personal injury, sure. Criminal defense, yes, and so forth. I can't say for sure that that's led to more clients, but I think so. When I added the personal injury category to Yelp, for example, I noticed that I started getting more leads from personal injury cases. So that makes sense. Even though at the time I didn't have a huge book of prior personal injury clients, it did seem to make a difference because your reviews, whether Google, Yelp, it's not just about, people aren't just reviewing if you know how to do that one thing. They're really reviewing your whole business. And so I guess my thinking is, if they trust me to handle this kind of case, if I either have the expertise in-house or can acquire, by building a team, that they'll probably trust me in another area too. So that's kind of what I'm going for there with the multiple categories.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that is, again, like, obviously this is one thing that I think listeners can benefit from hearing you. You recognize that your practice is also a business, right? So, a lot of lawyers will tend to push back about that, and for various reasons. And I don't want to get into all that, but I think it's really important. It's really important for listeners to recognize, like, you're thinking about building these professional relationships, and then how can I provide additional services, whether it's partnering or whether it's hiring or finding people, or expanding your own expertise, which I think is really, really smart and also good for listeners to hear. One of the third things that always comes up, and in the context of this review stuff, this is really why I think you're going to have some great insight on this, because you do have so many great reviews online for a variety of practice areas. A lot of lawyers will say, look, I work with, for DUI clients. They don't want to go online and leave me a review.
Right.
So how do you make that happen? How do you have those conversations? Do you have a process? How do you make that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. In general, particularly in criminal cases, people don't like to write reviews about their experiences, and for a variety of fairly obvious reasons. So I tend to get more reviews from people that have less serious cases, or sometimes they'll kind of try to write it in a way in which it's sort of vague as to whether they're actually the client, which is not ideal, because Yelp, Google want personal consumer experiences and not trying to just vouch for people in general. But I just sort of, over time, you have the reviews, people find you through the reviews, and if they have a positive or negative experience, they'll go online. They may not be willing to write about some things, but I don't have a particular way of really trying to encourage people to write about their cases. I'd say earlier on, I was really excited and active and encouraged my clients to write reviews. I think that it would be a good practice for anybody, myself included, to continue to do that. But I say the last 6 months to a year have taken more of a sort of, that ecosystem kind of just takes care of itself. Sometimes if someone says, thank you, you did such a great job, is there anything I can do to thank you, or something like that, we say, well, we love it when people write reviews, but
right.
That's about it.
Yeah, sometimes it's just as simple as asking.
Right. Yeah, and again, like at the conference, there were several different, the Lawyeronomics conference, they mentioned several different websites that you can use that I think help you set up with kind of active review monitoring systems. And I think that for some people, that's a great idea. I'm not doing that right now. But yeah, the reviews are huge. I think over the years, I have gotten a ton of clients from Yelp, from Avo profiles, and from many other sites where they're reading other people's experiences. I know for a fact that many people make their decisions that way. And so if you have a lot of good reviews, that's a big help.
Definitely. And is that most of your business from those sites, or is that organic, or are you doing advertising on those sites too?
It's mostly organic, but I at different times have done more or less advertising. I think the advertising can work. I think the advertising, in my experience, the sweet spot is actually when you're first starting out. So if you only have a few reviews, but you spend some money, you can show up, it says you have 5 stars, you'll appear right there with people that have 50 or 70 reviews. And some people don't really care that you only have 5. But once you reach a certain point, if you have enough reviews and you're showing up towards the top in organic, it may be worth asking whether or not it's worth spending the money. I know Yelp won't like me saying that, but that's okay. It's your call. I'm actually currently spending some money with Yelp anyway, so they can't get too mad. But at one time, I was spending a ton of money, and other times I haven't spent any at all. So I think it's worth experimenting with. But most of what I'm getting right now from the reviews is all organic.
Excellent.
Yeah. And you're doing a variety of online marketing stuff, because I did notice after I went to your website that the next website I went to, it followed me and I got a Jason Beahm ad.
Yes. So you got some of my cookies, and as I read, someone said online the other day, I think it was on Twitter, if you change the word cookies to trackers, everyone would freak out and no one would like them, and that's why they call them
Good point.
cookies, because it sounds nice.
Much more appetizing.
Right, right. Yeah, it's just some cookies, but yeah, that's retargeting. And I'd say most people get a kick out of it and tell me like that's pretty cool. I've had a few people tell me they think it's like stalking and super weird and like stop following me around the internet. But it's actually very inexpensive compared to all the kinds of advertising I do. The retargeting is probably the least expensive. And yeah, I've had some good reactions from people and have definitely gotten clients that way.
Awesome.
One other thing I want to make sure that I ask is, I know as a millennial myself, I talk about them maybe a little bit too much, but I do think, at least I would be inclined to think, that with festival law and going into that practice a little bit more, that you do have a lot of younger clients. Are there differences in working with younger clients, or are they more likely to review? Are there just Is there anything that you see that's a difference and could kind of help other lawyers work with or target millennials a little bit more?
That's a really good question, Kelly. I'm not so sure. I think, I mean, if you're getting out of touch with people that are younger than you and you can't work with them or communicate anymore, like that sounds like a problem that could exist at any time period. I know that, there's things are changing quickly right now. Some people might think, I don't know, social media is such a new way of communicating, or how do they want me to text them? But I can't say that I've really noticed that it's hard to work with, say, someone that's 20 or 25. I want to communicate with them in the ways that they communicate. So I mean, maybe it's just natural to me, but we'll text with clients if that's the way they want to communicate. We give them the tools to schedule appointments by clicking and using Calendly. Like I try to stay up on this stuff, but I mean, my goal is I don't ever really want to be old and out of touch, right? So I'm just trying to keep learning everything on the fly. So hopefully, if I have younger clients, that they don't feel like they're dealing with somebody who, can't use the tools of the current era.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Is I know a lot of lawyers are hesitant to or afraid of texting because it's such an informal way of communication.
It has its issues, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to everything. But I mean, who likes email? So I talk to clients on the phone probably the most. And so I think everybody's got their own thing. But I have some clients, probably a lot of them are young, that don't want to talk on the phone. They want to do everything by email and text and so forth. And so I think some of it is staying flexible, but you also have both the right and it's a good idea as a business owner and as an attorney to set the communication expectations that you're comfortable with. So if someone told me I don't text my clients, I wouldn't say you're a bad lawyer. It's just there are trade-offs.
Right. That's the thing is, and I think you said it well, is, and this is another thing that we talk about all the time. Why don't you ask clients how they actually like to communicate, right? Like, I mean, the service side of the business is so important. I mean,
Absolutely.
Sometimes people are going to make that choice just based on the way that they communicate with you. It's so much, lawyers tend to get into this mindset of, oh, well, I'm a super aggressive lawyer who's been practicing for 50 years. I'm the best person in town. I went to a great law school, and the consumers are like, they just don't care, right? Sometimes it's just like, how easy is it to get a hold of you?
That's true. And when I first started out, I have to say that was an incredibly encouraging thing to discover, because I had sort of fears of, how am I going to get a client over the hypothetical guy with 50 years of experience that you just mentioned? And I was astonished to find that the truth is, if you just show up like as a responsive, generous, kind, helpful person, put up a website, tell people this is what I do, you can get clients over the guy with 50 years of experience right off the bat. Not every single time. It doesn't mean you're as good of a lawyer in the courtroom as he or she is, but you can compete, and people make their decisions based on not what kind of grades you got in law school, not where you went to law school, or all kinds of things that I think lawyers may think that that's how those decisions are being made, but they're being made in a very basic kind of customer service, client, service way. So that could be both encouraging and discouraging depending upon where you're at and how you're doing things.
Right. The point there, though, is that whether you're very experienced, been doing it forever or not, like you've got to focus on service because it matters. It matters if you're an experienced attorney. It can be a huge competitive advantage if you're a younger attorney. But so many lawyers, like we hear this up all the time. People go out and spend a bunch of money on online marketing, and then they answer their phone like law firm. And it's like, that's not the expectation that people have. And when you hear hangups, you hear
right.
negative feedback from potential clients all the time about the service aspect. I mean, the classic stat that everybody always talks about is the largest source of legal malpractice claims comes from clients not being informed. And it's such a basic thing that you'd think that so many businesses are focused on that client experience. It just seems to the lawyers taking a longer time to catch up to that.
That's absolutely true. I've got two things on that. One, it's corny, but we answer the phone by saying, thank you for calling Beahm Law. How can we make your day better? And people like that. A few people have made fun of it, but it's kind of, I said it's corny, but that's all right. It's like we're starting things in the right direction because that is literally what we want to know and what we're trying to do. And then the other thing about the communication is I have had cases in which I've delivered exceptional results in court to clients, but they've been dissatisfied with the communication. Let's say that we got the case dismissed, but for some reason we failed to immediately inform them and they didn't find out for a few days or just not within the time period that they wanted. And they were very dissatisfied with the entire case overall just because of that. I've also had cases where things have not gone the way that we wanted to, but because the communication was good and we handled it all, A+, that they were still pleased. And so, it depends a lot on who the client is, but it just shows that the way that things are communicated, and if you do it in a timely and efficient manner and take responsibility and clearly communicate, it makes all the difference in the world. And it can be the difference between a happy client and an unhappy client, regardless of the results in court in some cases.
Listen up, listeners. This is gold here.
Speaking of a negative experience, I want to commend you, Jason. I did see when I was kind of poking through your reviews, I saw that there was a person who went back in and amended a previously negative review.
Yeah.
Because they said that you had reached out to them and talked through the situation with them. And that is pretty rare for people to do that without just leaving a comment of like, oh, I'm sorry that you had a bad experience.
Yeah. I got really excited though, because I had forgotten about that, but I think that's my favorite review ever. And the reason is just because of just what you said. If there was anything that I would want a potential client to read, it would be like, I had this bad experience, but they reached out to me and they were, great, and they fixed it. I don't remember the exact situation, but I do remember that is something that we do. If someone has a bad experience, we're going to follow up with them and ask, but there's no expectation that they're going to change their review or write about the fact that we followed up with them. We've done that many times. I don't think anyone's ever gone back and actually did what this person did. I thought you were going to find a more negative review to bring up or something, but that's a great one. Yeah, a good turn of events, really. That they were upset about something, and then they were really psyched about the fact that we followed up and reached out.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, your next client, like everybody knows you can't please all the people all the time. In fact, Amazon's done a ton of studies on this, that the more trustworthy reviews are the ones where there's a mix, right?
Absolutely.
And so the fact that you went in there and responded, that next client's going to be like, this guy actually cares. He took the time to go in there, address the concerns, respond.
Right.
Obviously, just from I think that just as a kind of asterisk note, folks need to be cognizant about, professional rules of responsibility. You don't want to blow out client confidence and stuff like that, but you can do it in a way where you're addressing that concern, and then the power of that, the authenticity, the empathy that comes through from that kind of thing is so valuable for that next client.
Yeah, and I'd say also about reviews that, I think my firm's had probably over 200 online reviews now between the different sites, and you're going to get some bad actors. There are people that will, basically unfairly demand their money back or threaten to write a bad review, or they're just, perhaps a little bit, for lack of a better word, crazy or malicious. I used to stress about this stuff, and I've really kind of gotten to the point where in most cases, I just let it go. And you know what? If somebody is a little bit wacky and writes a review trashing you, it may not be as bad as you think, because I've actually found when I go to like a restaurant or something or whatever kind of business, and I read a review from somebody that it's negative, but they sound like a nut, I'm like, okay, I'm probably actually going to like this place because this crazy guy says it's horrible, So I just feel like it can be, especially early on, it can be, and lawyers in general struggled with this. They were livid about, ratings online and people being able to write about their law firm on the internet. How dare they? But I think that it's okay to let go and not stress about it too much until it reaches the point of being actionable somehow, which is rare.
Right. Good stuff.
Yeah, I do the same thing with reviews. I mean, I think it's kind of the sane person versus insane person thing. If there are negative reviews, I read them and I judge whether it seems like it makes sense, or see how many good reviews versus negative there are, and go from there. You don't just take one negative review and go, oh, this is horrible. I will never eat there. I will never use this.
I saw a review the other day for a restaurant on Yelp, and it was a 1-star review because the wait was for 2 hours, right? And it's like, well, I still want to go there.
Right.
It hurts their score, I guess, and that's a separate thing. And everyone wants to be 5 stars, but sometimes the 1-star reviews, if the people are reading them, the readers may actually be taking away a positive from the review. And it's another review. More reviews are actually mostly good.
Right, totally. So I want to change gears quickly because I got to hear more. We're always asked about what types of things should we be doing from a client development standpoint, especially as we move into the post-digital age. So you've got a podcast. Got to talk about the podcast, how that gets started, and how do you kind of measure what role that plays in your marketing mix?
Yeah, I love this story. And I would say at the outset that the marketing mix part, it was never something that I was banking on, we would get measurable clients from this, or that it would lead to a surge in clients. It was a bit more of, number one, something I thought would be fun and that I wanted to do, and also that I thought was kind of, if anything, more of a long-term play, where I position myself as a expert and somebody that's, staying up on the trends. And so, but the way that it began was somewhere around 3 years ago. I had been following a blog. I think it's Festival Lawyer. He's got Facebook, Instagram. I mentioned Cameron earlier. And we hadn't met, but I had been reading his blog for a while. So I sent a couple of messages following up about things that he had written. And eventually we had a phone call, wound up talking for like an hour, and found out that we had all kinds of things in common. Mostly talked about music, because he's, go figure, also music nut, and part of his thing was that he had just been going to all of these festivals, and same thing as me too, not going to festivals, passing out business cards, but just going there and enjoying the music, and had been getting invited to do some talks on the subject too, but hadn't really quite figured out where he was going with it, what he wanted to do. A lot of these talks were at like bar associations and things like that. So I don't recall. Yes, he had done the year before. He had spoken at the Lightning in a Bottle Festival in California, which is an awesome festival, one of my favorites. So essentially, we become friends. We eventually meet up at a concert. Actually, I think, go figure, right? I think that was where we finally first met. And between the two of us, who knows how many different events we've been to, but we had a lot to talk about. And what ended up happening was I had this idea that when he did his talks, that he should have a DJ, because why shouldn't everybody that's doing a talk have a DJ to like intro and provide a little, music at the beginning and music at the end, and it would be kind of a fun way. And so you can imagine the first time we showed up at a bar association event for a CLE, and I set up my decks and mixer and PA system to play for like 10 minutes. No one had a clue what the hell was going on.
That is so awesome.
But I think we've had people multiple times ask us why the music is necessary for the event. And we always just die laughing. Like, why do we need to explain to you how music will, just don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. But, a lot of times the organizers of the events, and it's all with love. I say this, they're just not quite sure what the two things have to do with each other, but it makes sense to us. It's Cameron, when he was doing these talks, he wanted it to be something different than a dry lawyer in a suit talking about the changes in the law. And again, there's a time and a place for that. And I'm not knocking anybody that does that, but that's just not what we were trying to do. We wanted it to be a little bit fun and fresh. And so we did events there, but of course it makes more sense in like a festival setting. So we started working on putting together an event called Fest Law 101. We actually made a trailer for it on iMovie, which is pretty funny. I can see if I can dig that up. But we started talking as a team. He said he would never call me his sidekick, but if he called me his sidekick for this, I would be totally cool with it. And so he did DJ Laserbeam and the festival lawyer present Fest Law 101, kind of about those topics I was speaking about earlier. And, if a cop wants to search you at a concert or whatever, all those sorts of things. It's much more than that. And so we ended up doing like maybe 5-10 different events. We did some law schools. We did Duke University, San Francisco Bar Association, Lightning in a Bottle Festival a couple of times. And then, we just felt like we want to have our own outlet besides live events. And so we came up with the idea for the Festival Lawyer podcast. We did 10 episodes of that, got a great response. And we're currently working on putting together a plan for season 2, thinking about shifting possibly more to the drug policy side and kind of how the drug laws are evolving. Talking about prohibition and, kind of where we're at in current landscape as far as the administration's policies towards drugs and other countries and things like that, and some of the areas that we're interested in. But basically, it's just something that I really enjoy, just like I'm enjoying talking to the two of you. It's really fun to have an outlet to discuss, something that I'm both passionate about and also happens to be part of how I make a living. So, we both have really enjoyed it, and you guys have this podcast, so I'm obviously preaching to the choir on that subject.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, again, the thing that really comes through in everything that you shared with us today is so valuable. And thanks again for doing this. The authenticity of lawyers get in this mindset of, I've got to tell everybody that I'm a lawyer. I've got to put it in their face. I've got to hand out business cards. Your approach has been, at least in this context, I like festivals. I like music. Like, I'm super passionate about that stuff. How can I go to that community and contribute my expertise for the issues that people in that community are facing? And I just think that is such a valuable lesson for lawyers to learn, that, you're focused on a particular community. You're providing podcast information, speaking, helping that community out. And so that community is going to give back to you in the form of you becoming the point person for all of these different issues that touch the events that they're passionate about as well. And you're more engaged because you actually care about that community and you're actually involved in that space. And so again, I think this is just such a valuable lesson for so many firms out there that have focused more on the traditional kind of advertising and putting that kind of stuff in your face. There's just so much to be learned from this approach. And so I'm really so appreciative that you took the time to share this with us today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, I couldn't have wrapped this up with a neater bow than Guy just did. So thank you, Jason. Everyone, if you aren't subscribed already, please subscribe. Give us a rating on iTunes. We are now up to 6 ratings. Woohoo. So thank you to everyone who's left those. They're really meaningful for us to see the feedback.
You got number 7 right here.
All right. Thanks, Jason. And any guest suggestions, we are open to them. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, DJ Laserbeam.
I thought I'd have something witty to say to that, but
Well, I do. Out of bail, out of jail.
Yeah.
Music is the holy grail.
I love you both. That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
And if you're ever in Chicago, make sure you reach out. We'd love to connect. So thanks again, everybody, for joining. Thanks again, Jason. And until next time on Clienting.